you witness someone do that made you realize he or she is really, really smart? My wife's grandfather, he's a retired electrical engineer with a dozen patents to his name, and a long list of recognitions I can't be bothered to remember or name. I always knew he was brilliant, but never realized just how, until one day last year we were visiting, and he got a phone call. Keep in mind he's been retired for 20 years and is 86 years old. The phone call was from an electrical engineering firm from halfway across the globe, asking if they could fly him out to his site and have him consult on the energy capture of a hydroelectric dam they were building. They'd run into a problem that none of them, all electrical engineers, could solve. They had consulted 3 of the top related university departments in the US on the issue, and the last one had referred them to him. 20 minutes on the phone, and he agreed to think about it. 2 days later, he had solved their issue and written the solution on a single 8x11 sheet of paper, which he scanned and emailed to the company. He said he took so long to write it up because he didn't want to have to fly all the way there at his age. His explanation was so clear, I was able to understand and follow it with no relevant higher education.
All right, it's time to start over again. Come on, Elf. Come on, Elf. What? An orc? No way. Well, since I'm here, might as well build a home. Oh no, wrong tree. I better get out of here.
One time, my drunk uncle was in jail and needed bail. They all looked to him to fork up 100% of the cash. Having been asked, he realized this situation had 2 possible outcomes. Number 1, pay for his bail and never get the money back. Number 2, not pay for the bail and the whole family blamed him for it. So my dad decided to throw them a curveball. He told them that whatever the rest of the family raised for the bail, he'll not only match it, nobody offered 1 cent. Poor Drunkle. I had a teacher in high school that, using both hands, could write a sentence starting from the beginning and end simultaneously. He even split the middle word of a sentence. He also spoke around 5 languages. What the F? I was playing the card game Egyptian Rat Screw with some friends, and then all of us noticed that one of our friends was slapping a bit too fast to be believed. It turns out he was counting all of our cards and had each of our decks memorized, which is just insane. Today I learned it's not Egyptian Rat Screw. Older brother always was terrible at school. I can remember him straight up asking why he needed to graduate high school and then again in college. He then accepted a low-level job after graduation in marketing that ultimately fell apart due to the company executives screwing up big time. During all of it, he somehow was able to keep a small client, and within 7 months of working, was promoted to their executive marketing director, making 6 figures. Now he has multiple clients on the side and is always scheming something up. Dude is as hard-headed as they come, but nonetheless a dang marketing genius. Blows my mind how far he's come. I was once in Chinatown, and I saw this old Chinese guy with a bunch of groceries. He had tied the bags together by the handle and slung them over his shoulder. It's ridiculous. The next week, I was struggling with a lot of groceries, and I remembered the old Chinese guy. Stopped on the sidewalk, tied all my bags together, and walked home like the unencumbered dork I became that day. Not a person, but my parents' old dog. My mom would get bones from the butcher shop for their dog. They were long enough that the dog couldn't get all the marrow out of the center. The dog figured out that only my stepdad's truck was heavy enough to break them after experimenting with the other vehicles at the house. There was usually a bone in the same spot on the driveway every time I went home. Reminds me of crows dropping nuts on crosswalks. In high school, I had a friend who we made fun of all the time for being dumb. But he would have the wackiest ideas that would somehow work. One time around Christmas of my sophomore year, a few of us decided to buy a 30-pack, and then later decided we didn't feel like drinking it that night. I couldn't keep it at my house, but one of my friend's parents was coming to pick all my buddies up. Nobody knew how they were going to get the 30 out of my house into one of their houses. Then my friend came up with the genius idea. He went upstairs in my house and wrapped the 30 in wrapping paper. He then proceeded to carry it right out to the car with our friend's mom waiting and say it was a gift for his girlfriend who he was going to be seeing later that night. I realized that not being great at school doesn't mean someone isn't ingenious. I knew 2 guys in undergraduate who would play mental chess. As they'd pass in the hall, one guy would say, "Knight to queen 3," or whatever. The other guy would roll back his eyes for a second, and then nod to acknowledge the move. Both guys then kept walking in opposite directions. Later that day, when they passed again, the second guy would declare his counter move. A game could last days, and they never forgot where any of the pieces were. Each had a mental image of the board. Sure, they might have been faking, but these guys were always first and second on the dean's honor list. for all 4 years of my undergraduate. I knew them pretty well. I think the mental chess was legit. Most really good players can do this. Once someone becomes familiar enough with the game, it becomes a lot easier to recognize patterns. Of course, intelligence is required, advantageous to get good at chess. Sitting in a best friend's apartment on the East Coast in the mid-1980s, he's working on some code on a prototype Unix workstation MIPS had given him. He runs his program and it produces an answer, then runs it again and produces a different answer. Thinks about it for a minute and pronounces, "The CPU is broken." Right, the CPU is broken. Never heard that one before. Has it occurred to you that, yes, it had occurred to him. Went through 3 or 4 scenarios. Then he pulled out the machine-level debugger and started stepping through the code. Look, right here, the flags weren't updated right in this instruction. Whatever. Sends an email on the brand new internet to MIPS, gets a response the next day. Oh, you have that CPU. We have verified your issue. We will put a replacement in the mail promptly. His CPU was broken. 30 minutes from diagnosis to request to repair. Anybody who can explain highly complex things very simply. It takes an intelligent person to understand it, but it takes a brilliant person to grasp it so fully they can dumb it down to explain it to anybody. I think it was Feynman who tried to write an introductory textbook on some obscure topic and concluded that more research was needed, because he was unable to explain the topic simply enough. I was at my desk waiting to make a purchase over the phone, and I mentioned to a coworker that I always have to pull my credit card out. I should have this number memorized by now. Another coworker overheard that and said, "I know your Visa number," and spit it right out. After I got off the phone, I asked him what the F, and he said he heard me say it a couple weeks ago. Numbers just stick with him that way. I already knew he was a bright guy, but that took it up a notch. I'd ask him very politely to not ruin your life. When you sit down in a meeting for work where you're trying to solve a big problem, and someone can say, "That's the wrong question," you need to be asking, people who can do that generally understand the bigger picture and all of the various variables and factors in play and how everything fits together. It's some next level action to watch the entire room go, "Wow, they're looking at trees and that guy's looking at the forest." My responses are limited. You must ask the right question. Lazy people.
You can't live forever, but you can damn well try.
Welcome to Raid Shadow Legends. And if you're wondering just what we got, Raid Shadow Legends is a free-to-play game for your PC or Mac running on the Plarium.
People are the best at this. I witnessed a kindergartner who couldn't draw straight lines, keep his pencil still, and drag the paper around to draw a triangle. You'll never be as lazy as the person who named the fireplace. A kid in 2nd grade already knew algebra. Everyone knew he was smart. For April Fool's Day that year, our teacher decided to be cute and give us a pop quiz. So she went to the 8th grade class and asked for an algebra test. Made copies and handed them out to us. Some of the kids were freaking out, and the teacher assured us that we already went over this. So she left the room, and some of the kids started crying. She came back in after a few minutes and said that it was just a joke, but she graded the tests anyway. The smart kid scored an 18 out of 20. My stepfather used to teach me math that was several years beyond what I was learning in 2nd grade. I'm an information sponge, and he fed my brain anything that I asked for. One day, my parents got a call from my teacher. The teacher told them that I was teaching my classmates 4th to 5th grade math in my spare time at school, and to make me knock it off. I never saw it myself, because I was about 2 years old, but when my older sister was around 4 years old, she used to go grocery shopping with my mom. She, my sister, would keep a running tally for all the items in my mom's cart. As my mom took something off the shelf, my sister would ask the price, and then would add it to the total in her head. If my mom put something back, she would subtract it. My sister was right every time when they got to checkout. She's a doctor now. My sister also used to read the bedtime stories to my parents when she was around 2 years old. God dang genius. Meanwhile, I'm the kid who ate Play-Doh. My dad had in Florida City. He invited me to go to the research hospital with him one day. becoming fascinated with the business. He would spend weeks at night reading books and comics. Apparently, he spent years studying the complex math.
Predators. How completely ruin somebody's life, intentionally or by accident, whether they deserved it or not. What happened, and why did you do it? Story 1. Some kid from a forum told me how he once ruined his sister. We were in his family in a competition. Got the admin of the forum to call the cops on him and arrest him. Those are this type forum once a few years ago. Some dude called home and was sounding really depressed. So I figured I'd try talk to him and maybe try and cheer him up or something. Well, played a few games of Team Fortress 2 together. I started to notice he was pretty odd, but nothing too crazy. He was a huge brony, by the way. Well, then we get to talking, and he's telling me about himself and how he has some spinal nerve issue or something, and it's very expensive to cure, and his family is very poor. Then goes on to talk about how abusive his family is to him. His mother, father, sister. And then this is where it gets fucked up. He starts talking about how much he hates them and how he wished they would die. Now he wants to rape his sister. Yeah. Then goes on to talk about how he wants to slit his father's throat right in front of his mother, then kill her too. And he starts talking about how he learned to make a bomb and how he was going to try and assassinate a political figurehead. Then he also mentions how he wants to commit suicide by lighting the house on fire while everyone is inside and tied up so they can't escape. Mind you, all of this was explained in very graphic detail. So he finally goes to bed, and I immediately message one of the admins from the forum, who I was friends with, and told him the situation and sent him the chat log, and told him to find out where this kid is living and call the cops on him, because this kid is seriously fucked up. After an hour or so, he responds and says,